Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and good to see you all here live and loud with us. It feels like all of Celtic fans across the world are all reacting in unison as we get the news that Wilfred Nancy and Paul Tisdale have left the club. We are here live and loud to react to it and talk on everything that's been and gone and what is yet to come. We're here with our old friend for the first time in 2026. We're bringing back McBride Ace. McBride, good to see you, my man. Thanks for joining me. Hail, hail.
Happy New Year. A rare bit of excitement as well this afternoon, so lots to discuss. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you're all well.
Happy New Year, everyone, indeed. And yeah, when it wasn't a Happy New Year for the first couple of days, it maybe feels like today's maybe a wee bit January 1st for some of us. And straight away, like, it feels like there's a big weight, there's a big cloud that's just kind of been lifted. And yeah, I guess everyone's kind of got their wish at the end. Nancy is out. It's been a while since I spoke to you, McBride, but I'll throw it over to you on this one. I, for one, completely surprised, I would say borderline shell-shocked that this has happened at this point. I personally thought the club were going to hang on until his 3-month review was on in his contract or whatever the get-out clause was to save themselves a few quid, but they've stumped up the cash and just kicked him out the door when they should. So I am shocked.
I'm a wee bit as well, but I think like everybody overwhelmingly wanted him out, so it was becoming like, obviously there's other problems at the club as well, but it was just seems to be getting worse and worse. And yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but a few of the interviews I've been watching and things, and I would say to people, I hope he's not going to come out after this and say there was positives for that. Like the Motherwell game, for example, right? Motherwell are a good team. And we know them obviously quite well, and CeltsAreHere, they're doing pretty well in that. They are actually a pretty decent team, but like Celtic just get really outplayed by Motherwell, and they looked like some of the things that actually we should be, like well organised, well drilled, all that type of stuff. And after the game, you're just thinking they surely can't come out and say there's any form of positives from that. And then it's a weird one as well. The first half against Rangers, played really well. That goal from Yang was like unbelievable, and you thought, yeah, that's something you can build on. It looked like we could go and win the game 2-3-4 or whatever, and then as soon as they scored or whatever, we just capitulated again, or they changed at half time. So just a really strange one overall, but just not really, I don't know, just not really a good fit. Like, not a good fit with what's happening with the club at the moment, but even just the current squad, bringing in this sort of radical system, and just a complete mess. So
yeah, I'm quite with you on that, because when you hear Luke McCowan's comments coming out over the weekend, like, I don't know about you, I know, McBride, you're a high flyer, you rub shoulders with the likes of the Desmonds of this world and everything else. Only joking, but but in my life, going back like 10-15 years or something, I used to work in call centers and do some sales jobs, and when I was listening to McCowan's comments, I was getting big flashbacks to having a cigarette break and talking to other people about the new manager that's just been brought in. And it felt like somebody who works somewhere, like rather than a football player, if that makes sense. And it's like, oh, what's the deal with this new manager? Oh, he's an idiot. Da, da, da. And it's no real surprise, I think, that it's transpired the way it has. Got a wee comment here that I want to pick up on. I wasn't saying 24 hours ago I want to give him time. I think the thing I was trying to wrestle with, and it'd be great to hear your thoughts on this, McBride, is when you're going through with the Nancy thing, if we were going to be persevering with it, for me, it's like, what's the point? That if the point was to be better than what we have been in the past under Ange and Brendan, where we've got to positions of strength and then excelled, then going through, and I used Shawshank Redemption as the example, climbing through the shit pipe, trying to escape the prison. If we're going to go through all that and it's going to be worth it, then like, okay, let's maybe go along with it if that was the case. But the realization for me kind of coming out of the Rangers game is really, when you look at the transfer business that's already started in this month, we're waiting for fishes to jump on the boat, Julian Araujo and that boy Tabby. The the future isn't going to be different under Nancy in terms of like what I'm talking about just now. And I kind of came to the realization chatting to everyone yesterday and even on Axom earlier today that if we are just going to keep going the way we have been under previous managers like Ange and Brendan, going through all this with Nancy isn't worth it when you could get someone else that will do what these other managers have been doing, play four at the back, keep everybody on side, play with the transfer policy and get results 90% of the time. So if we're not ultimately going to change big picture, why change the small picture? Or why change, it was pointless to do such a radical move, I would say, if you're not going to see it all the way through, number one, and then number two, change previous failings or change previous shortcomings, ultimately.
Yeah. I was quite pleased to see Tisdale go as well. I mean, obviously you'd all the stuff with it was rumoured that he was assaulted in the car park and everything, and that's obviously taking things like too far. But he's not. His record's been really, really poor, and you come in and you say these things like I'm a footballing doctor, and he doesn't have any real track record, any of that stuff either. There's lots of people in world football that have got quite good records of doing certain things with certain clubs, and guys like that come in, and if you're going to say something like that, you've got to sort of walk the walk if you're going to talk the talk as well, and it was all a lot of change needed overall, but that's the start of it. Obviously everybody was like probably pleased to see Lawwell go as well, and I'm thinking a way back to that point where Nicholson's on like doing the actual YouTube video, actually speaking to the fans for once, and just this big surreal feeling around the whole thing. The fans have been like asking for like some communication from the club before the likes of these things happen, and then it's kind of like almost becoming one of those scenarios where, oh yeah, they want to come and talk to us now because they want to give us a telling off for doing this or doing that, or they're not happy with this, or the fan media is getting banned, and I still can't believe some of the stuff that's actually happened. I don't know about you, Quinny, but I just sometimes like you just have a wee moment and think, like, has that actually happened? Like, have we actually got to that point where we can't have fan media in the club, and boycotts, and people not want to spend money in the ground, people not want to go to games, people threaten giving up their season tickets, actually even just refusing to go to a game because they don't want to spend money inside the ground. Like, it's all just went properly south. But at least now we've got a bit of change. So Peter Lawwell's leaving, Tisdale's gone, the manager was a disaster. Pleased to see them taking action. I know it's been a huge disaster, but like at least they've actually recognised that and said, right, this isn't going to work, so you take the action that's needed, because other clubs do that as well, right? Other people managed sacked today. Angerim's gone at Man United, and that's what happens at football clubs. So it's good to see a bit of action. And then back to your point about the overall plan, well, obviously Tisdale had a big influence in that as well, because he was like head of recruitment or something. So these names that are even looking at, you mentioned that guy earlier, you're thinking that do we actually need a winger at the moment? I mean, Yang's been the only guy who's been a bit of a shining light really in a lot of those performances, so you don't really need like a right winger. Like, you're crying out for like centre halves and strikers and all that type of stuff. So just a complete mess overall. And I don't know, Quinn, I just never really took to him. I didn't like listening to him. When I listened to him, one of my immediate reactions was this guy's just talking shite. Like, it's like, but see if we are thinking that, there must be an element, like you said, with Luke McCowan and the players, where they're in a way thinking that as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got a strong message and you've got a way of getting that across or whatever, that's fair enough. And people maybe buy into that, even if you're playing well and you're not getting results. But sometimes I'd listen to him and think, what is he actually talking about here? And I think that was the problem, really.
Yeah, I think for me, somebody mentioned it. I may have been asked him on Axon with us earlier, but like, I didn't really realize this at the time or notice it. But like, a lot of his chat was like, was like self-centered in that regard. So it was like my players and I and me, and I guess one of the first things he said when he came in was it's we, not me, kind of thing. But what I want, see that, and again, I always hate linking the two in conversation, but it's somewhat unavoidable at times. But see, the thing about Ange, right? When Ange came in, is you knew that he totally got the gravity of how big a job this was, how big it could be for him in his life, how big Celtic was, period, anyway. And that this was a special opportunity to be grasped. And Ange didn't quite come out and say, I've been working my whole life to get to Europe and this is a dream job. But we felt that that was the case. With Wilfred Nancy, you never got that this was like a dream appointment for him, or you never really felt that like he was really, like he said he was excited when he came in and stuff. Of course he was, big contract, probably compared to what he was on and moving to Europe. But you never really got that sense from him, that battle cry of, like, this is my life. I've been working, I've been doing all this stuff to get here. And I think that was when you don't connect with the fabric of a team like Celtic, of a club like Celtic, you've got that kind of employee attitude mentality of it's my next job or something like that. It's more than football at clubs like Celtic, and you do need a bit of that fabric, I think, a bit of that material about you where you might not be a Celtic fan, but you know what? You can get it without being a Celtic fan. Ange was bloody Australia. It's not as if he's growing up being a fan of a big local club and is like tapped into it in that regard, but he still totally got it. And maybe that's an age and an experience thing, perhaps. You never know. But that was one thing I really felt with listening to Nancy. When it comes to the nonsense comments, I thought for a few of them, to be honest with you, the guy was just begging to say no comment. And obviously you can't do that. So he was just word salading his way through everything. But hey ho, it is what it is. And let's hope now from here that I guess attention turns probably to the next one. But my main responses I'm getting on Twitter right now is, who do we want for the next manager? Thanks a lot for the super chat, Jude Rama. He was never officially unveiled, so as far as I'm concerned, none of this ever happened. It's a great point. He was never actually officially unveiled. It was actually the day that they stopped inviting. I was meant to be there for his first press conference. I think CeltsAreHere were on the rota and they cancelled it, so there was no meeting the fans, no unveiling at Celtic Park. There was no anything. It was just that wee press conference in the middle of the night, or that wee YouTube video, I should say, sorry, with Celtic TV, and that was the end of it. And that in itself, I think, kind of epitomizes the situation, really, that it was amateur hour and how it was handled. Like we got this in quotes from Martin O'Neill when he was on TalkSport, and from Wilfred Nancy maybe 2 or 3 games ago, that he decided when he started. He had the option to start kind of whenever he wanted, and Wilfred Nancy, decided to start as soon as possible. And the club should never be, when the next 3 games is Hearts, Roma, Cup final, the club should never be letting someone decide to whether they're playing that or not. They should have been in control. Martin is going to see it through to the final. He earned that final by beating Rangers in the semi, and then from there we can discuss the handover and whatever. So from start to finish, it's been amateur hour.
It's just a huge risk as well. I mean, he's come from the MLS, and we know the MLS quite well through CeltsAreHere, and it's a different setup in terms of the whole competitive environment. I'll give you an example. Giacomakis went there at Atlanta, and he sort of slaughtered the league and said it wasn't competitive enough, and he wanted to go to a Mexican team, and they routinely do very well against the MLS teams. And the whole setup there is this whole league phase where actually you don't even really need to win the league, and then you go into the playoffs, and then it goes towards playoffs. So it's a different style of football and everything overall. But I just thought, as you said, he never really seemed to get it. I mean, Ange, I think he was a Liverpool fan, so he probably understands the importance or the history of big UK based football clubs or the leagues here, or the passion for football or whatever. And then from Nancy's point of view, although he'd done relatively well, I think played some good football with Columbus, and he won the MLS Cup, which is basically winning the league, but not a lot of experience. And then you give somebody like that this magnitude of the job, and then there's a huge risk that it can go really badly, like it did. And as you said, with the timing, it should have been a lot easier for him because Celtic had started to do well again. So he could have just come in and said, right, I've got these theories, or these this is where I want to go to, but I'll adapt that a wee bit and we'll have some stability here. And then when I get to the window, I'll start going for some of these more radical methods of playing and things. But I mean, I didn't make the Celtic Rangers game at the weekend because we were down in London. I was at the cup final, and it's just like it's like comedy cut stuff, you know, like Liam Scales running down the wing and, you know, shouting at the players over every 5 minutes doing this, doing that. And it's just, yeah, I mean, sometimes keeping things simple is the hardest thing to do. And obviously his job was to be the football manager. So he might have felt like, I've got to come in here and I've got to impose my way of playing and all that sort of stuff. But it went wrong pretty quickly. And with that style of play, I mean, we're just conceding like 2 goals a game against anybody, really, you know, not just in the big games.
And everything.
Yeah, Dundee United, 3 against St Mirren, you know, just like no real winning style of play. You know, if you were winning 5-4 every game, then people would be saying, right, well, we need to tighten up, but we're scoring 5 a game. But like that, they were lost 6 games out of 8. I mean, that's any manager in the Scottish League would be under pressure for that. So Aberdeen sacked Tisdale, right, and his recent form's probably been better than Celtic's recent form. So, you know, it's not really a situation you can be in. So anyway, we've got to move on and discuss what happens next. But it's just been a huge disaster, and I guess we've only brought in one guy on loan who we know him through Sorare and MLS. I think Julian Arroyo is a good player. Would be, I think, quite good with Celtic as an attacking right back. Good option there as attacking right back. So if we can get a bit of stability back, then we've still got, you know, things to play for this season. We're not out of Europe or anything yet, but it had to really happen just now, because it was becoming quite concerning that we're going to go through this window and sign 4 or 5 guys and just think, right, we don't really need 2 or 3 of them anymore. You know, we're not playing that style of football anymore. Why do we need this guy that's going to play this mad position or whatever? Get back to something a bit more traditional, your back 4 or whatever, you know. So,
as you know, but there's not that many people out there that play that kind of system. So like I kind of give a bit of friction when I hear that, because like we need a striker. It doesn't matter if it's a striker for Nancy or the last guy or the next guy. A striker's a striker. We need a centre back. We need centre mids that, you know, and yeah, fair enough. You maybe want to make sure they're as good a fit as possible for as long term as possible. But I'm not that convinced that anyone Nancy would have signed off would have been a total useless player to anyone else if they were good enough. You know, like that's obviously an important element. You know, if they're a decent player, if they're just a shit player, it doesn't matter what position they play or what system they suit. You know. Ballis Boy, by the way, thanks very much to everyone for the donations. It really means a lot. Who put Tisdale in position? It's consensus that it was a Dermot Desmond appointment. I've also kind of caught rumours through the grapevine, by the way. A lot of you are saying for Michael Nicholson to go. I've heard through the grapevine that he was offering to leave and was and he hasn't. So make of that what you will. That's all the detail that came to me. I'll maybe share more if it comes to me. It just depends on the sensitivity of it all. But that was some word that came to me anyway. I want to throw this one on screen. Quinny, question. What tipped them over to sack him? Because, you know, if they were going to do it Monday, why didn't they do it earlier in the day? That's kind of what everyone expected. I'm going to be a wee bit self-indulgent here. I've got a feeling that they maybe all tuned into Axom this afternoon just to see what everyone was saying. And between either the comments around being Andy Dufresne going through the shit pipe to end up nowhere anyway, to end up the goal is to be 1 point ahead of Rangers still. And if we qualify for the Champions League, then we're the best directors in the world. And the fact that like the points are worth more than the money, you know, like sacking Nancy today versus waiting for it to be cheaper to sack him in a month or two. The points lost in that time are worth way more than the £1 million or whatever the fictional number would have been. So I've got really no idea. But if I had to give an answer, I would say they were tuning into Axom today. Any thoughts from you, Big Blade? Why is it so late in the day, do you think?
I think maybe they weren't really planning to sack him after the Celtic Rangers games. You said that there was lots of chat about transfers. They did get Araujo in for that game. Not saying he made any impact in the game, but they got him in for the Friday. So there's clearly some work still going on to try and get behind them in some way. And then just the way it went in terms of that game, I think in terms of a Sunday night, you've got to let the stock exchange know, being a PLC, you've got to like inform them. So even before they announced it today, I think 15 minutes before that, there was some sort of announcement made to the stock exchange. So the likes of those things take time, and particularly the time of the year as well, you know, in terms of getting sign off and those things. I know that football doesn't stop, but people who do other jobs professionally, etc., do eventually sometimes stop. Crawl for a shit pipe. We need to stop talking about shit pipes here, by the way. But I actually couldn't believe that he wasn't sacked after Motherwell. Like, there was part of me that was thinking, right, doesn't matter what happens here, we're just going to give him a window and just say, right, it's went really, really badly, but this guy needs a bit of time. This is the strategy we're going to go down. We're going to let him sign a couple of players. Then we're going to give him to the end of the season. Then we'll make a decision. So after the game, when didn't sack him immediately, I just thought, right, this has been a predetermined decision here. But like, thankfully, somebody there said enough is enough, because that's the way everybody was really sort of feeling about it. I mean, the Celtic fans wanted him sacked after the first 3 or 4 games, far less like after these games. People really could see that happening. And as you said about the system, right? So eventually Angerim changed that system at Man United, and then there was that whole rant yesterday where he was like almost like calling out people at the club and everything, because I think he was maybe under a bit of pressure to change it, and he felt as if he should be able to play the way that he really wanted to play. But seeing it in this sort of stubbornness of, yeah, that's just the way I want to play and all, I just never really liked that at all. I mean, if it was, maybe it is some revolutionary type system, but like you would have needed 3 transfer windows or something to get the right personnel in to play that type of game. And really, I don't think, with no disrespect to the other teams in the SPFL, I don't think you actually really need to do that either. I mean, the remit is to beat the other teams in Scotland first and foremost, and then you start looking at what you're going to do in Europe. But every time I seen us playing like that, I just thought, imagine like if we played against like a Barcelona or a Real Madrid, or like, it's like we're losing 3 goals to like anybody. We're losing 2 goals in 10 minutes to Livingston. Like, imagine we came up against a right good team here. It would be like, literally, like, honestly, you would lose 7 or 8 goals. That's how bad it was. And some of the stuff he was doing was baffling as well. I mean, no offense to Tony Ralston, right? But when has Tony Ralston ever played at centre back? Do you know what I mean?
For such a high team as well.
Yeah, and like, so we've got guys like, you know, Liam, he never really fancied Liam Scales, didn't he? Don't think he could really play in that system. But none of the centre backs are really particularly quick. So it's just like suicidal, you know? And every time you get half time, like, a team would make a small change, and that would be the whole thing snookered as well. So that happened again against Rangers. So they made it they brought on Diamandi, they made a wee bit of a tactical change, and all of a sudden we went from doing really well to like looking the complete opposite. It's like this whole Jekyll and Hyde thing where there's no in between. So it was just crazy. I couldn't believe I was watching the second half, and honestly, I quite enjoyed the first half, and played really well. We looked as if we could have scored a good few goals, and you're thinking maybe we have actually turned some form of a corner here, because, you know, this is a big game, and maybe we'll score a few goals and we'll get a bit of confidence back. And then the whole thing happened again in the second half. It was like watching with complete disbelief.
It was an absolute train wreck, wasn't it? On the Motherwell point, I think you make a great point there, because the thing about the Motherwell game, I said it in the aftermath, and a lot of people said similar. Don't know who said it first, maybe me. But Motherwell certainly looked like a European team. It looked like Celtic playing like Midgetland or Molde or something like that. You know, one of these teams that we play, and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to smash them. And then they turn up and they zipped and popped the ball about, and they finished their chances. And like, Motherwell looked levels up. You know, they looked really, really good. He's also actually, in terms of the chat here, one of the favourites amongst the live chat to be the next Celtic manager. Now, the Askew guy, to just touch on this for a minute, no harm to him. Like, fine. I don't mind him as a candidate or whatever. But he wasn't without teething problems as well, you know. And I know it wasn't terrible, right? But I went to go grab this just to show everyone, right? But I remember pre-season and not going too well for him. And looking at the results, you see 4 wins here, right? But they beat Clyde in extra time. They beat Peterhead by 1. They beat Stenhousemuir by 1. They beat Morton by 3. Fine. These are all very low-level league teams, obviously. Pre-season, I get that, right? But, you know, positive results. It's unlike Nancy where he's losing all the time. But it took them a while to kick into gear and start winning all the time and start, like, where was the St Johnstone Cup game? They took St Johnstone to extra time as well. St Johnstone are a league below, massive strip down on the team. And we're kind of looking around the back end of October, November before they start getting all their plaudits and they start really going on an amazing run. So good coach and all that. Certainly the sort of guy we want at Celtic. But the concern I've got with guys like that, and I think the St Mirren manager was in this category for me before the cup final, is, as we've seen with Nancy, you need something to be the Celtic manager beyond being like a good coach or like a decent manager or anything else. You need to have that thick skin, that extra level kind of winner mentality. And I think with Askew, it's maybe, I don't want to say it's too early to judge. So I think there's actually a good amount of meat on the bone for him this year for the limited resources, very limited transfer activity for the large part. He replaced somebody else kind of last minute as well, if I remember rightly. So he does have some good stuff going for him. But if we were to do the domestic thing, I think Stephen Robinson's the only candidate to look at. You know, he's just won a cup at our expense, obviously. And, style of football, knowing the league, Celtic man, all that kind of stuff. If you were going to go for a domestic appointment, I think he's the only candidate I would be, not that I would back. If we went with Askew, I would back him as well, of course. But I think Robinson, I said as well before we appointed Nancy, that if Stephen Robinson's name was Scott Brown at that point, he'd have probably got the job. You know, Scott Brown's name's floating around the Aberdeen gig, I think, today. Maybe see how that one develops. Maybe one on the conveyor belt for us a few seasons down the road, perhaps. But I really don't know where we go for a manager at this stage of the season, this current situation, that isn't Martin O'Neill, Sean Maloney and Fotheringham.
Yeah. There was a couple of things that happened after we appointed Nancy as well. So I think Nicky Hayden went to Genk. So he gets sacked by Bruges, so that shows you how quickly it can go south as well. I mean, Club Bruges beat Rangers 9-1 in aggregate, and then that guy ended up getting sacked by Club Bruges as well. He moved on. Knutson, I think he'll probably end up in those sort of Strasbourg and Chelsea circles and things. He's quite an ambitious guy, and I'm not even really sure he would come to us at the moment. But personally, I think that Martin O'Neill had a really good overall influence. He doesn't really need to be the manager, I don't think, Martin O'Neill. I just think because he's got such an influence and that sort of connection with the fans, he can be involved in some way there. And I think that actually Sean Maloney, etc., would be a reasonable shout. I mean, I think that Maloney was the guy who was really setting up the team for those games as well, when Martin O'Neill was there. So if that is the case, then he's shown that even though we weren't doing very well, he can do that sort of job. And then in terms of Askew, it's quite a short period of time. And again, I don't know what his previous experience, etc., was. So to do something like that, again, would be a huge risk. So in my own mind, I think after having all these disasters, the safest thing to do would be to go and get that type of appointment. Again, get Martin O'Neill and Maloney, etc., involved. And, even if it's just like an interim thing until the end of the season. Because even just to take it outside Celtic again, Man United are talking about appointing somebody to the end of the season until the long-term candidate is actually available. So if Celtic's ideal candidate in some way is available, then go and do it just now. But if not, then it's got to be like Martin O'Neill and Maloney. Get some stability back. They know the players, know the club. Why not?
Yeah, in terms of the Stephen Robinson comments, I've been told on good authority he's a Celtic fan, he's a Celtic man or whatever. And I'm not saying I want him in, but I'm just saying if you're going to look domestic, that's probably the only one I would talk about in any serious kind of note. Took Motherwell to a cup final, won a cup final with St Mirren's, been in the league for ages, is consistently one of our strongest oppositions. If you're to do the domestic thing, that's all I'm saying. I'd say he's the leading candidate. I think Kieran McKenna, Robbie Keane, these are names that will come back around again. I think Kieran McKenna is one of these ones where I think if Ipswich don't return to the Premier League, he'll be coming to Celtic if the job's available. I think that's probably what he's hanging on for. And when it comes to Robbie Keane, I found it rather interesting the way he was speaking after he beat Rangers with Ferencvaros. He fielded a lot of questions about Celtic, the Celtic job and all that kind of thing. And a lot of you guys tell me that him and Dermot Desmond are tight, so certainly wouldn't rule that out. My number, I'm kind of remembering as I see the chat going, some of you mentioned Marco Rose. Marco Rose was my top shout when Brendan left. If you wanted to pick up from where Brendan left off, you wanted a genuine elite manager, a guy that's taken teams far in Europe with playing like a style of football, being economic in the transfer market. Yes, the scales of the economics of the Red Bull clubs are bigger, but they still don't like do anything crazy daft, you know. So he's still available. I would still very much be interested in Marco Rose, certainly. Other guys as well, like Thiago Motta, and there was somebody else, Igor Tudor. I like these guys a lot. I think they're on big gardening leave situations. Juventus have paid 2 managers off this year. They're right behind us. And I don't think any of those kind of guys, I think they're in the betting. I don't think any of them will come around. Enzo Maresca's getting named. I could see Maresca coming to Celtic, but Chelsea will be paying him off for ages. And if he takes a job, you lose a lot of your payoff, number one. And number two, like, I think he did a pretty decent job, like, on the whole with Chelsea. So if, like, Glasner goes to Man United, Maresca could end up at a Palace or, you know, something like that. He's still going to be in the Premier League picture, I would imagine. So I think the Maresca ship has sailed. But yeah, I really don't know where we go beyond O'Neill. I put a post out about it and people are saying like, oh, Quinny, we don't want this. And it's like, well, at this stage of the game, like, it's the only move to make, I think, unless there's some sort of inspired bit of genius that's going to come our way, which, let's be honest, the club doesn't have form for.
So when we got Ange, the thing with Ange was he had a lot of experience. So we hadn't heard of him, right? We didn't know who Ange Postecoglou was, but he had already won things. He'd managed Australia before as well, hadn't he? So
yeah,
and he wasn't like a young guy. He had a lot of experience. He had a specific style of play, but he backed that up by using that to win things. He also had a really good eye for a player, you know. So he'd come from that league and he came over and he decided these are a few guys who I think actually I would like to buy. Not just guys who played with him, guys who played with other teams where he looked at them and think, yeah, he'll suit my style of play and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, it's got to be somebody. I don't think like appointing a Robbie Keane or a Scott Brown or whatever is the way forward at the moment. Maloney, for example, has been part of the Belgium setup, etc. He's been with Roberto Martinez, you know, so he's done like high level sort of coaching side of things. So look, him transitioning a wee bit more into management, I think, would make sense. Again, he maybe would need a Martin O'Neill or something in the background there to, like, just, you know, somebody to just chew his ear a wee bit, a bit of guidance, etc. And that could work quite well. But, you know, it's come full circle, as I mean, when we signed Nancy, I don't think if anybody had said, yeah, we're going to appoint Maloney, anybody would have been really that enthusiastic about that. They'd maybe have been saying, oh, it's somebody's previous connection with the club, it's not an experienced manager, or we're going to be forward thinking or whatever. Whereas now everybody's like, you know, as of yesterday, you would have taken him in a heartbeat type thing, you know, like it's just changed like so much. So yeah, that might, and he's available as well. The other thing is that, you know, some of these guys you mentioned, some of them might be available, but so it's mid-season, so there might be some people who will become available or who might not want to move just now because they're in the middle of their job with somebody else, essentially. And that's why I think maybe getting the Nancy deal done was a bit easier, because the MLS is in the off-season at the moment. So if he was really wanting to go, then, you know, it was the end of their season type thing. But yeah, it's just been a big mess, and I'm just glad that actually we've taken some action and we've recognised that. And okay, we don't want to be in this position, but at least it's been recognised. And if Michael Nicholson is at least offering to take some responsibility for what's been happening overall, then that's a start as well. I think there's still more change needed at the club. We've discussed that at length before, but it's a start. So.
Got a question here from Dominic, who will be doing the recruitment. Celtic actually, on the quiet, hired a new scout, former head of something at Chelsea, James Walker-Bell. So he's the guy that's been coming in to, you know, be a new. We covered it in a video the other day. I forget his exact position, but I think he'll be the one maybe leading the recruitment strategy. And you know, he's a Chelsea guy. I went through the seasons he was at Chelsea. It was actually under Todd Bowley, and a lot of my bride will probably remember, and a lot of you guys will, like. His role was centre backs and strikers. And if you think about the centre backs and strikers that Chelsea have bought under Todd Bowley, they've all been minced or injured, to be honest with you. So, but the one thing I like about the James Walker-Bell appointment is he knows what Chelsea are looking for. He knows what clubs at that level, like what metrics, what markers, what kind of like insights that they look for. He's getting credited with Chelsea signing Estevao and Andre Santos. anyone could have scouted them. I don't think that's any real like feather in the cap. They were like the clear wonder kids of the league. But all the same, you'll know the mechanics, really like what appeals to a big Premier League club, a Champions League club. If you want to be Celtic and get the guy before they're expensive and turn them into somebody. So I quite like him being involved. He's quite early in the door, but he's got a lot of experience. I don't think it'll take him much time to get going. I would imagine that's who's going to maybe steer the decision making a little bit on who to approach. Personally, there was another one I wanted to throw up here. Has Columbus Crew got a new manager? I actually found this dead interesting. About a week after Nancy signed for us, his assistant is now the St. Louis manager. So his assistant actually is now an MLS manager in some capacity. Is that one of these cases where, maybe the assistant does a lot more heavy lifting than what you realise until you don't have him anymore? Maybe like Brendan Rodgers, Chris Davies type of thing. And yes, Columbus Crew hired, I want to say, a manager from like Brøndby or something like that.
Swedish guy, wasn't it?
Or Mulder or something. Yeah, they got a guy from there. So yeah, he's not going back to Columbus. I would imagine. So just thought I'd add that in for the comment there.
Yeah.
And I think there's something else I was going to pick up on again. I think it was on recruitment and such, but like I say, like Tisdale was head of football operations. So what that kind of, again, we've had some snippets from him in terms of presentations he's done and whatever, but I think a lot of his focus was on like working with Maloney, player pathway stuff, academy stuff, as well as like transfer department. So I don't think he was the all-seeing, all-knowing scout transfer man. I think it was just an overall football thing he was brought in for. Heavy-handed in transfers, obviously, don't get me wrong on that front. But there will still be scouts and all that other kind of thing working away. The guy's not been at the club that long, really, and I don't think he really brought anyone in with him. So his absence, I don't think really delays or stops anything overall. They might need to cross-check his work with someone else, maybe, just to make sure, or any work that's been done. But yeah, I don't think that's something that will slow momentum for any momentum and transfers. Listen to me. That might be happening right now.
There's been so much happening, Quinny, but obviously there's been the Barrowfield development and everything as well. So through time, you'd imagine that when you get those things, you need somebody to head up certain projects within the club or whatever. And the club's been trying to grow, and we have actually produced guys like Vat and Ben Doak, etc., and then we haven't actually kept them.
Yep.
So that's one thing that's always been on the agenda, is actually finding a way to keep them, because all these things, we go to all these leagues try to get this next gem or whatever, and we've had a couple of them potentially in our own system that we've not been able to keep happy as well. And then I don't know how you feel about this. So obviously we've had all these transfers before, and we've all this, we've built up money by getting these guys in for a couple of million, and some of them have went for really big fees and done really well for Celtic, etc. But I just want us to just go sign somebody that's got some actual proven like quality about them. I sound like Brendan Rodgers now, but I think that Rodgers, after Kyogo went, said, I want a striker in. Now, he wouldn't have wanted somebody that was going to come in and just be a massive punt. He might score goals, he might not score. He wanted somebody who could actually score goals, and we're now still crying out for that. And we sold Adam Ida, which I think everybody at the time thought, well, okay, that's probably the best move for everybody involved. But the problem was we never actually had somebody there lined up to come in from. We're scraping about the free agent market, people cancelling their contracts and then come to us, all that such shambles. So, we need to actually, I take like a Giacomakis back or whatever, somebody who's actually got a track record of scoring goals. Doesn't matter whether 23 or whatever, just spend 4 or 5 million on somebody that has got a previous track record of putting the ball in the net, and just forget about having to always have somebody that's either a bit of value or resale value or whatever. You don't need to think about that at this stage when you've got 70 or 80 million in the bank. We need to get back to actually winning games.
And yeah, I'm totally with you. And I seen a comment there I want to put on screen. I really hope it's a joke. Where the hell did it go? I'll find it. Where the hell did it go? Sorry. But yeah, we need to get back to winning games, mate. I'm totally with you. Sorry, this comment was right there. Now it's ran away from me. Basically what it said, and I really hope it's a joke, was I've just seen Scott Brown and Neil Lennon going into Celtic Park. Yeah, I hope that's a joke. Like,
That's probably as a joke.
yeah, it probably is, but I really hope it is. Somebody said Roger Schmidt, and I seen this actually as a thread on Twitter earlier today. Now, I would be right happy if we got Roger Schmidt in, but one thing about Roger Schmidt, when you look at his record, you might look at it and go, oh, Salzburg, PSV, Benfica, clubs like us, and done well, and all the rest of it, right? But Roger Schmidt, when he was PSV manager, spent way more money than we ever have. You know, the PSV team that Roger Schmidt was manager of, they signed Mario Götze from wherever he was playing, maybe Dortmund or Bayern at the time. I know it had been a free transfer, but still, they went and bought the boy, the goalkeeper, what's his name? Benitez, who was like a top target for bigger clubs. And at Benfica, you know, he was there when they signed Enzo Fernandez from River Plate, selling him to Chelsea for a big bucket of money. And, you know, so although he's worked in this similar type of club environment, he's used to having way better players and spending way more money. So I don't think he's a nailed it. Ultimately, Roger Schmidt is high wages and high expenses. So think Brendan Rodgers, but dialed up a bit. You know, you need to pay him a lot and you need to back him a lot. Not that it wouldn't be worth it or a good idea or anything, but it's just not going to happen. He's currently employed as global sports director for Japan and everything they're doing. So he's a good guy. The Japanese don't really get these appointments wrong, do they? So I like him, but it would be uber expensive, to say the least. Marco Rose is quite similar, but I think Marco Rose, if you look at his career, he's not really like from Gladbach and Dortmund and Leipzig and Salzburg. Yeah, there's been good players there, but he's never been a very active operator in the transfer window in that sense of like needing players and building a team. He just kind of comes in, works with the team, and yeah, there's transfers, but that's why I would probably edge Rose over Schmidt on being realistic for Celtic, really.
I think some of these guys as well, Quinny, like until the structure of the club changes, some of them could just still be a huge disaster as well. But you don't want somebody coming in, like sitting there like Angerum yesterday saying, I want to be the football manager, I'm not being a head coach, or I don't want to be told basically what system I have to play, and or he wanted players in, they wouldn't buy players for him and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I think you probably want to go a wee bit safer at the moment and then let things settle down a bit. There's also a lot of players injured at the moment as well. You've still got the potential of Alistair Johnson coming back, Jota coming back, although I don't know where he would have played in Nancy's system. You know, it's like, where would he have played? And some weird other stuff like that Simpson Pusey guy. Never really understood how that guy couldn't get a game when we needed a ball playing centre back, a right footed ball playing centre back, and then just still wouldn't actually play him. So there's been loads of really weird things going on just like that as well. We brought in Inamura. Inamura was a guy who was a ball playing centre back. Okay, he wasn't strong, but he was a guy who, if you're playing a possession based type of game, would have been a really good centre back. He was papped out at left back for a while. Then we signed Sarachi, then said that he should really be going on loan. That was planned for him. Then we never loaned him. So like there's a lot of stuff there that's got to be sorted out with just the manager as well, because the whole recruitment side of things was an overall mess as well. And that's why I think Tisdale going I'm quite happy about as well. There's things that need to be sorted out there in the background as well, and not just the managerial side. But if you do get somebody like an Ange, I'm not saying you go for Ange, but if you get somebody like that who can come in and say, okay, I know these markets, I'll work in the Scandinavian market or whatever, and I'll get the guys to fit the systems, and I've got an idea of what I'm doing, then it should still work. But you could still bring somebody in and they could say, right, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and then the board will say, no, we're not doing that, and they'll say, well, why have you hired me? You know, you need to be really careful with this appointment, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you say the Swedish market there, you brought a wee memory back to me. I seen on the timeline, I think it was yesterday, that Mainz in the Bundesliga are about to sign the right back from Hammarby. And considering we've just signed Tunecki from them, we've maybe needed another right back in the building. And when you mix that up with the left back that was in Sweden, He's just moved to Frankfurt. Everyone was calling for him in the summer. We spoke about him on the channel. Kosugi, I think his name is. And there was another guy we were linked to in the Swedish league, Bazuma Ture, who's went to Hoffenheim, and he has been brilliant this year. Yeah, he is wild. So it's one of these things with Celtic. If we're going to live that life, then we can live it. If there's a top prospect in that league, get him. You know what I mean? And Fran's settling for second and third options like we're doing. And again, McBride, I'm with you all the way there that I think the club needs to be more club-led in this way. You know, like, it was one that I thought was quite cool when Ange came in, right? Because when Ange came in, we got this word out that the B team were playing Ange's system, and they were looking at the youth academy, like implementing some of the principles, perhaps, and you know, trying to teach the young players. And I thought, oh, brilliant! Ange has given us a style, you know, that we can own now, and like we can develop players with, and then future managers can, you know, maybe do their own version of or whatever. But there'll be a team there that's constructed to do the thing that it's meant to do. And obviously, when Brendan comes in, that's totally different. And now we're here, so the club needs, if the club wants to be the things it says it wants to be, it has to be club led. The Celtic way has to be not quite written in tablet, but it has to be not too far off. Like, we should be able to play three at the back, really. Like, if we hire a manager we want and we want to go there, it's not this crazy wacky system. Playing one centre back, you know, is maybe something we want to talk about and look at a bit more. Fine. So I really want the club, no matter who comes in next, like, it really needs to just own. It doesn't even need to be a formation. It's just a philosophy, you know. Like, and Celtic's got a really good one already, and it's wingers, it's goal scorers, you know. And like we have these things that we've seen over the years: maverick number sevens, flair players. You know, we've got identity already. We just need to kind of own it a bit better and really like crystallize it so that everyone understands that these are the sort of players we're after. Even as a winger like Louis Palma, who can't run or dribble, he's not a Celtic winger, as example. You know, like in. You know, there's a bunch of other ones I'm sure we could pull out the woodwork. It's just the easy one that comes to my mind. It just makes everything way easier, and it takes less pressure off the manager as well. Not that that's something we need to think about at this moment in time, but with us being in the January window, talking about player ID and in different markets we're going to run in, we're so manager led that when Ange comes in, yeah, we can tap into the J League and we can close deals for us. And then when Brendan comes in, it's all about the phone book or the scouts. And you then wonder now, that's why a lot of the questions, like, where are we getting deals from now? You know, because the only players that we're signing seem to be the ones that phone us up and say, I'll come to Celtic, you know?
Yeah. We've been in for guys for a while. Jacob Bream's a good one. He's a good player. And you know, certain systems, he doesn't really play as a winger. So the one that really confused me was Balikwisha. We watched him for so long, and then all of a sudden we were looking for wingers, and then we went and signed him and thought, doesn't really play as a winger. And it's not worked out. So it's not. There's been a disconnect there, and I get what you're saying. I'm trying to think in my head why they might have given Nancy the job in the first place. I think because he played an attacking style of game, maybe they thought that would have been a reasonable fit. Because you're talking about free at the back, right? But Nancy, he didn't play a traditional free at the back. You know, I watched like Crystal Palace play, and they play a free at the back with three guys at the back. Guy, and then Munoz on the right, somebody who's quite athletic in the left. But the guys who are playing at the wing backs are wing backs. They're guys who are athletic, can get forward, do a bit going forward, but mainly they're good defensively. And then they've got guys like Chris Richards, Lacroix, and the guy who's on a free contract, Guehi, and he plays for England. So like that's a totally different setup of a back three to all of a sudden playing Kieran Tierney at left back or asking Liam Scales to run down the wing. You never watch an English Premier League game and see the guy who's the centre half running away down the left wing and think you just don't see stuff like that. So yeah, you can play a free at the back, but you've got to have the players, and you've got to have a reasonable structure there. You know, don't only run down there if it's obvious that that's like a bit of a one-off. Whereas like even Scales, so we've got the thing with the Luke McCowan comments, right? But Scales came out and made comments after the cup final as well, and he was already, you could see after 3 games that he was already almost starting to question what he was being asked to do, and then he got dropped. So it was becoming quite apparent that he didn't actually believe what the manager, and he was one of the guys who actually throughout the season he was one of the only defenders who was defending. I'm not saying he was a great player or whatever, but he was at least able to defend, and he was part of that run where we beat Feyenoord 3-1 away from home.
Feels like a lifetime ago, man.
It feels like a different season, doesn't it? It feels as if it's not even in the same campaign. And then even I was at the Roma game as well, and it looked like they could just go through us at will. Obviously a better team, but they just looked at it and then they pressed up and they thought, yeah, they're not really that good at playing out. They pressed up, and then they would just get down the sides so easily, and you think I just don't see how this is going to work. So yeah, in terms of was it ever going to work? Maybe it would have worked eventually, but he was never getting that time, and are we even able to get those players? So we get a centre back who's good on the ball, can run quick, and can defend. So who were we signing next? Josko Guardiola and Guehi in a free transfer, and like we just forget about the budget, and financial fair play. We'll just start paying people $200,000 a week, even if you see, but seriously, are Celtic even in the running for any of those guys? Maybe the guys who could become the next ones, where you maybe have to pay 8 or 9 million for them. But again, those are really risky transfers as well, because all of a sudden you're signing somebody at 19 who might not actually go on and be that next big player. But we need to get back to some of the basics, I think, and you've got to be week in, week out, beating the other teams in Scotland first and foremost, and then you go for there, obviously.
When you asked that question there, why did they go for Nancy? I heard my own voice in my head from when I was previewing who could replace Brendan, and I think Nancy was like number 5 or number 4 on the list. And the words that came back into my head was, if you're after an Ange, this is the top candidate, like out from the outskirts of world football, that could come in, bring in some local knowledge, tap into a market we don't have access to. And I think that was the dream that they were living. They think, oh, there's another Ange type guy. We'll bring him in. He's a winner. And then he'll fix the transfer stuff. He'll get a few players in that he can close and he can get a good deal for, and he knows it will work. And he's just not even he's not bought himself the time. He's spent all of his goodwill with all the losses and everything else that was spoke about post-match and training sessions and everything else, sadly, for him. So I kind of think that's what it was. And again, it's a manager-led approach. It's, can we find somebody to do all the things? Because we're not doing half the things. So anyone that we bring in, we don't just need a coach. Like, listen, I think there was enough reason to think of him as an optimistic appointment, because it could have just been, and MLS has got some good players in it. And if he, how many games has he had? 8. If he had won, let's just even say 5 of them, and we were going into this window and we're getting some top talent out of North America, it might not have been too bad, but that's not the reality we live in. The reality of is, I think ultimately it was not, he was out of his depth, I think is the ultimate way to put it. I think he actually coached the team you could see them trying to do his system. Obviously they weren't totally convinced or able to implement it, but I think out of his depth is the thing. Like, I kind of look at him now and think, it's probably like me being the Celtic manager. You know what I mean? Like somebody that's just way out of their remit, out of their comfort zone, out of their expertise. I often think of the Premier League as being like the Formula One of football, because it is almost a different sport being a Premier League manager, I think, versus probably any other league really in European and world football, with the facilities, with the the infrastructure, the support staff, everything that they've got going on around it. Working in the Premier League is totally, it's like NFL. It's totally raised above. Don't get me wrong, La Liga and these other big leagues aren't that far behind them, right? But the whole stage, the whole show of the Premier League and everything that goes around it is totally different. And I think like MLS to Scotland or MLS to Europe really feels like it's getting that way. I've seen a post I was interacting with earlier on Twitter as well, where it's talking about this is really going to harm MLS's reputation. And I wholeheartedly agree with it, because there's been 2 or 3 guys that have came over from MLS to Europe and they've all flopped. Bob Bradley, Jesse Marsh, I'm not a fan of. I know he did half okay with Salzburg, but Leeds and Leipzig, he was terrible. Patrick Vieira, very good at New York City, worst Crystal Palace manager ever. Can he hold a job down in Europe between Nice and Genoa? And then you add Wilfred Nancy to the conversation, and no other manager has came from MLS. And me and you know, mate, as well, that league has got some broad talent in it. Nobody wants to buy them. Nobody wants to spend good money on them. They want everyone cheap, or because there's not that confidence in MLS that the players will translate to more competitive environments and deliver. So it definitely, I don't know where I started with that point. I'm really sorry, but just to finish it, it definitely harms MLS, and I don't think that's really anything about. I forgot where I started with that. Sorry, everyone.
I get what you're meaning. So you get somebody and they go to those sort of different markets, and there are some good players in MLS. Look at Kai Wagner. Kai Wagner's, he's 28 now, but he's went
Kai Wagner, man. How long have we been crying for Kai Wagner at Celtic? All these years with Greg. No harm to Greg, but
first game, Birmingham assist within 8 minutes or whatever, and might not fit our overall recruitment strategy because we always want to get these guys who we can get a bit of resale value from, etc. But a guy who's 27 or 28 and just puts up really good stats, does good stuff, gets goals and assists, experienced. So I wouldn't mind seeing a bit of that. But then there's good young players in the MLS as well. The guy Freeman's at the right back. Is it Orlando? Guy who's come through and obviously looks as if he could go on and go and play in other teams. And teams like Chelsea buy goalkeepers and everything from the MLS. So it's got to be the right type of player or the right fit for whatever you're going to play or the right club. But yeah, I mean, the overall recruitment's been a bit of a mess, really, at the end of the day. And, guys can take a bit of time to settle. But back to Nonce, I mean, I just, after the games, I just thought sometimes I don't really understand what he's trying to say, It was almost like those David Brent moments, isn't it? Like, yes, we're connecting. And like, why don't you just come out and just say we're crap? I just come out and say, yeah, we're really poor there, we've got to do better. Like, that would have done. A lot of people would have connected with that. They would have said, yeah, I watched that game where we were rubbish in the second half. See, if he'd have come out and said that, I think he would have got more grace. It was all this, like, high-level thinking, oh, yeah, we don't need to think about that. We want to think about connections and blah, blah, blah. And just, like, I don't know exactly where you're going with this, Given time, maybe you would have done a good job. But I just, you don't get that time at Celtic and Rangers. You just don't. It's not possible. You just don't get that time. You've got to win games. So
I'm with you. I like this comment that's on the screen here as well. It's quite appropriate, I think. And Journeyman, SPL is a pish league, one of the worst in Europe. And see, on like Standard of Football or something, you might have a case there. Don't get me wrong, right? But the Scottish League is a great testing ground, a great like if you can be very good in Scotland, I think particularly at Celtic, you maybe want to extend that a bit further in the league. I don't, but if you can do well here, like you get a winner mentality, you get a real steel and determination. Like you mentioned Giakoumakis earlier, and I remember those comments. He went to Atlanta United, he was scoring not every week, but he was scoring for fun, and he couldn't stand the fact that nobody cared when they lost, or it was a bit different getting up for games, and he wanted to go to, like you mentioned already, Mexico, where it's just like Celtic, essentially. It's like Glasgow, but a country. They're all mental for it. Their stadiums are all packed out and all the rest of it. And again, like, so a league standard, like, is one thing, but what the league offers is something totally different. Again, I could look at the Austrian league and the Belgian league, like we often do, McBride, and the standard of football was really good for a lot of the teams. Even some of the minnows, they play some really nice stuff, but not all of them have the ability to go up a level. Not all of them get that kind of next level kind of progression, winners mentality, metal, where they can kind of move on. And I think the Scottish League is showing, like, it's not widespread across every club or whatever, but I do think the league has something of value to give players for development and that competitive element. So I do agree, like, the football level is maybe a bit outdated, but I don't think it's a pish league, one of the worst in Europe. I think it's one of the best in Europe for character testing, stress testing people, you can handle the ref here and score goals, and you can handle the oppositions and deep banks of 10 guys on the edge of the box at times. Then when you go to another league and you're not in those situations, he'll go maybe the exception. You should do a lot better.
I think we also lack resources. So
yeah,
Celtic and Rangers have got a big gulf in terms of resources over the other teams. So when you see Celtic and Rangers winning 3 and 4 and everything, that's not happened this season, but previous seasons or in the past, it's always been just Celtic and Rangers. And that's one of the big problems for the league. You look at what Motherwell have done. If Motherwell can get a few million in for Lennon Miller, etc., then that's just a no-brainer for them. They've got to take that, and they've got to, just say, well, that's secured the club's future even for the next 4 or 5 years, and we'll still work with this budget, etc. So a real overall lack of resources in the league, whereas you look at some of the other leagues, they've got like reasonably good TV deals and things. The Dutch league, they've actually got a reasonable TV deal. They earn money from that. They've got a couple of clubs that do relatively well in Europe, and then all of a sudden that allows them. But they're still susceptible to losing guys to the English Premier League and everything as well. So no real huge change there. But we're not really that well respected, I think, also because Celtic have been doing really badly in Europe for ages. Our coefficient in Europe's horrendous. So we've really been underperforming in Europe, whereas Nicky Hayne was mentioned, and Club Brugge have been in the Champions League 8 out of 9 seasons. So they've got a bit of a European pedigree now because they always pop up in the Champions League, and they pop up sometimes. They play good games against teams like Aston Villa, and all of a sudden people say, well, actually, some of these teams are really quite good. So that's the overall problem in Scotland, and with Tony Bloom coming in, that might help a wee bit as well, having somebody else that's going to get some results in Europe. But I don't think it's going to change hugely in the short term. But Celtic and Rangers and Hearts going forward should be able to win some games in Europe. You should be able to beat that Kairat team or whatever in the Champions League qualifiers. You should even be able to say,
just score a goal against them. That's all we had to do. One goal.
We've got the money to say, right, why don't we just indulge ourselves here and go and spend 7 or 8 million on somebody to give us the best possible chance of getting all those riches from the Champions League and staying at that sort of top table? Because there's a lot of teams, in other leagues that might think they're bigger teams than Celtic and the like, but actually they'll never get to play in Europe. They'll play in their own leagues, and that league will maybe be regarded as a much bigger league, but they'll never get the chance to play Champions League football and things. So it's not as bad a league as a lot of people think it actually is, but I think that it's quite clear there's been a lot of underperformance there relative to other similar teams who've got those stadium sizes or fan bases or overall revenues, etc. Celtic get absolutely tanked by teams in Europe all the time that have got hardly any resources compared to us. Look at a Midtjylland team; they were really good, right? They've got like a wee small stadium and a low turnover and everything, and and they played us off the pitch. And that was under the Martin O'Neill bit as well, where we were doing a bit better. So we can do better. We can definitely do better. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, completely. And I think like the comparison to those European minnows that are outperforming themselves and us and all the rest of it are something that we aspire to, but you need a plan for it. You do need to have a deliverable, ambitious plan. And, it's one of those ones. Celtic clearly don't have one, sadly, and that's where we lose ground to a lot of these other teams, because we're always in this halfway house of we do some stuff that's quite forward-thinking and active or proactive, but we do so much that's what's the word, pedestrian, where it's just backwards. We're waiting for signings to come to us. We're not able to go out and hunt the market, which is frustrating. And I think like when you look at the Midtjyllands and the Bruges and everything else, they're great examples. But again, I kind of reference what I mentioned before with Nancy. If we want to go down that path, there might be a wee bit of a pipe to crawl through. Doesn't need to mean we lose 6 out of 8 games or any nonsense like that, of course. But there might need to, but to totally transform into that sort of model, you would need some attrition. Maybe Paul Tisdale is the beginning of that, perhaps. But it's not just manager. That's like a structural thing. Everyone needs to be completely, this is the way the company, the club, the business, however you want to think of it, is being ran. These are the principles. These are the main principles of what we do and what we don't do. And we carry on with the best intentions, kind of regardless of, immediate term with the longer term view. So I would like to see us get that way as well, but I really don't see it. I would really hope at this stage, and again, I've seen this with Paul John when we came off earlier on, like Dermot Desmond, I just honestly would love this guy to turn into like a full-blooded capitalist and just hire all the best people that he can and then tell them to get on with it and leave them to it, rather than keeping this little inner sanctum of guys and the clique and you know, the jobs for the boys kind of situation in the boardroom and all that kind of stuff, because it's just leading to terrible decisions getting made over and over again. And somebody's asking me to do a poll. What do we want to do a poll on? Sorry, I don't mind running a poll. So yeah, and when Knutson, he comes into that as well, because Knutson's not a fix. You know, these guys aren't silver bullets. You know, you really need these people to come in alongside a structure. We mentioned Ten Hag before, me and you, I think McBride a few weeks ago, and we were chatting about this, how Leverkusen could get rid of him dead quickly. And that's because, like, that is a machine that works, you know, whether a manager's in place or not, you know, the club is well organized, etc. And we're just like, we are light years away from that, you know. So it's just one of these kind of further frustrations. People are mentioning TV revenue and all that kind of stuff. It's coming into the conversation. I think it's maybe just where we're taking the conversation, but Celtic have sacked today Wilfred Nancy and Paul Tisdale. They're no longer with the club. We're waiting on maybe further confirmation on some other bits and pieces, like who could be coming in. We all widely expect Martin O'Neill, Sean Maloney, etc., to be back in the building. And yeah, I know, I certainly know that. But when you hear he's just sold a company for like £2 billion or whatever, you'd think, man, come on, he's not running a care home business and deciding who's the general manager and who's the bloody, you know, where do they get the toilet paper from or anything? You know, like people like that buy businesses, hire people, and let them run it. Doesn't do that with Celtic. I wish he would. We'd probably all be a lot better off for it, himself included. So we waste so much money, man, on errors and trusting people rather than trusting an organisation of people, you know.
That's the thing, Quinny. We're not even asking them to put that $2 billion into Celtic. What we're asking is for us to spend the money that's been generated in the club. How's that money been generated? The money's been generated through some good player sales, through the fans being passionate and constantly putting their money into the club, and just generally, like, you know, the whole Celtic overall thing. It is a big club, even in world football terms. It's a big club in a sort of medium or a small size type league, but there is a huge footballing club. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go in the world. Like, you go on holiday, some random place, you'll be walking down the street and somebody will walk by you with a Celtic top on. That's the type of club that Celtic are. So as you say, if Dermot Desmond just goes, right, okay, I've got $2 billion in the bank, I'm not going to put any of that money in, but I'm going to loosen the purse strings a wee bit and just say, right, we're going to splash out a wee bit more, get this guy in who's I don't know, director of football, and give them a bit more of the reins to actually spend some more of that money. And all this talk of we've run ourselves into the rainy day. Remember Lawwell and Nicholson, everyone were talking about rainy days. They have run us into the actual rainy day by talking about and managing that decline into a rainy day. If they're just giving Brendan Rodgers a signing or two, he might have signed a new contract and we might have still been absolutely flying, talking about how we're doing better in Europe and everything after Bayern Munich, and all of a sudden it's went right downhill. So maybe the solution is that they've just got to actually loosen up a bit and just stop thinking like accountants, etc., and actually think like an ambitious football club.
Yeah. Liam's coming back to me here on the capitalist comment. I kind of disagree. I think, like, anyone, like, I don't know, I can't imagine any capitalist or anything alongside that sees Celtic squander a £40 million, £50 million cash injection from the Champions League by not signing a striker and then equally not sacking people. So I think, like, proper capitalism, I think, would have probably saved Celtic to this point. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a bit, maybe I'm misspeaking a little bit with terms and whatever, but I think I know what I'm trying to say. I was going to say something else on top of that, and it's kind of slipped by me. I'm really sorry. Sugar and spice. What was it?
I was just like to see if there's any WhatsApp rumours or anything, or anything that's any other news happening yet.
Yeah, go for it, man. But yeah, I cannot. I'm so sorry, guys. I had 2 points in my head. I got one of them out, and I forgot the second one. It's kind of derailed me a little bit. Well, I really hope for me, like, a lot of people might go, "Oh, Quinny, we need a manager and stuff." At this point in time, the only appointment is something that looks like what we had before Wilfred Nancy. And yeah, I don't think any other solution is. Don't get me wrong. Like, if we appointed somebody else, like it was a proper candidate, then I knew a different person might work. Who knows? But I'm not really up for it right now. I'm not really ready for it. I'd rather just, like, get back on the tracks, man. Just get back going.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, on the whole, yeah, I think there's a wee comment on that. Care Homes, man, I bet you he didn't even put what. Yeah, exactly. Like you know, like he's not. I know that it's all about profit maximization, etc. Like I get that angle of the conversation as well. Don't get me wrong, but equally on that side of things, it's not just about the penny pinching element, but it's the revenue maximization. Where Celtic, I did some of you have been saying in the chat, Quinny, put your CV in. I've been preparing something. I was going to send something in anyway back into Celtic, but I'll keep my cards close to my chest just now. But over the last 25 years, since the millennium, Celtic have been in the Champions League 13 times, half, which is pretty criminal, to be honest with you. And that's what it was. That's what it was. You're talking about, we don't even want Desmond's money. We don't even want it. We just want the club to even at least spend what it makes. Celtic's net transfer business, I had to look at this for UEFA regulations. UEFA regulations are over a 3-year window. Over the last 3 years, McBride, I'll give you a guess. What is our net transfer spend?
It's probably in outgoings, isn't it? Like we've generated money, so it's got to be like minus 30 or 40 million or whatever. So like money's going out rather than
we do like we've made over 50.
Right.
So we're over 50 million in profit on transfers for the last 3 seasons. So we don't have financial restrictions, by the way. Now we do have maybe restrictions on wage to revenue, because that's something that UEFA looks at. And when you look at our squad, guys like Palma, Bernardo, a lot of these guys will be on decent money. You know, Luke McKeown's probably one of the poorest people in the squad. You know what I mean? Is why everyone will be, a lot of these guys that were signing from Europe that cost anyone that costs over 3 million quid is going to be on like 15 grand a week or so, give or take, you know, coming from the Benficas and that type of thing. So that's maybe the only thing we need to worry about. But otherwise, like you're dead on, McBride. This season currently, we've made 15 million euros in transfer money, and we've also received 5 million pounds for Jeremy Frimpong. So right now, this season alone, we are 20 million to the good. I said in December, we cannot finish January in profit. It's just, it cannot be the case. You know, the squad is so underserved and there's no need for it. There was already bags of profit in the bank already. And, you know, we need to make more money next year by winning the league, qualifying for the Champions League. And you're not going to do that by finishing this year net profit on transfer spend yet again. So that was the other thing, was the net spend over 3 years is 50 million to the good.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Nah, I think that makes sense. And it's coming to a head now. I've seen someone's put up the not another penny there. Like, so people have paid for the season tickets, people have bought strips at the start of the season, all that front-ended money goes in. People are now in a situation where they'll go into the stadium and they'll say, no, I'm not spending £4 on a Fanta. I'll have a drink before I go in. I'll get a pie before I go in. I'll get a sandwich. I'll go in. I'm not spending any money in the stadium. So all this stuff's all got to be addressed, because that 80 million surplus or whatever that is there just now, that could diminish if you lose the fans. And that's the point. That's the point the fans are trying to make. They're trying to vote with their feet in some way, which is difficult because you've committed for a full season and the club's got all that money up front. But Celtic have got to address that, because going forward, if you want to keep paying people £40,000 and £50,000 a week at the top of the wage scale, so some of the guys there will be on good money, long-serving guys like McGregor, guys like Tierney come back with free transfer, they'll all be on really good money after they get their performance-based stuff. So you've got to be able to generate income, and losing the Champions League qualifier was a disaster. But Brendan Rodgers been out for ages asking for players, and that all came ahead, and he went away as well. So, you know, that stuff's all got to be addressed as well. So
I'm going to do a poll for the final 5 minutes of the show, guys, okay? I'm going to put who do you want as the next manager. Candidate 1, Martin O'Neill. Candidate 2, Askew, because you all just keep saying him. We can put 4 people in the poll, McBride. Who do you think we should also include in it?
I think the third favourite with the bookies is Ange.
Ange? Cool.
Yeah.
I would take Ange back in a minute, man. I really would.
I would as well, yeah.
Like, with Ange, I think you would just give him the closest thing to a lifetime contract that you can. You want him to be here for, and you know, I fucking loved Ange. I remember being at games with you, mate, and like, remember that game we were at, and they got the tifos out, and it was like the big Jock Stein, and it was like standing on the shoulders of giants. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the best guy we've had, I felt, at that time. Like, really gets everything out of the team, And also, by the way, see, one thing that Ange was very underrated in, that I think we can see in the fullness of time, was way better than Brendan and so many other people at managing up. You could really feel that Ange, if he wanted something, he got it often enough, maybe not every time, but you can imagine him talking to Nicholson and saying, listen, mate, just get the fucking deal. It's just, I'm not messing about here. Sign the guy now, and maybe that was part of the breakdown towards the end, fine. But if you're going to bring him back, I think you bring him back completely on his own terms. He's a manager I wouldn't mind being manager led by, because he gets it. He's got everything you want, really. He's made a lot of money as well now, and he's won the Europa League in Tottenham, so he's not really got as much of a thing maybe to prove to himself or the world of football or whatever, however you want to think of that. But Ange, great shout, mate. Number 4, who else should we put into this one? John McGlynn's name's been in the chat a wee bit, by the way. I think that's a wee bit.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put Knutson in. He's out of contract end of January, which is the end of the... Or no, I think he's technically out of contract now, but Bodo Glimt have got 2 Champions League games still to play. So he's maybe on some sort of rolling month-to-month thing. I don't think he's extended. I'm pretty sure we would have heard of that. But I'll put Knutson in there. And, by the way, for any that listen to the Celtic Way, you're going to hear all about... I'm waiting to hear Tony talk about Kettle Knutson again for 3 weeks, or whatever it's going to be. But there we go. Knutson, his name is going to be firmly back into the chat everywhere, isn't it? I'll put the poll up, guys. Get voting away. Who would you want next? Do we go back to O'Neill? Do we go to Askew and try and get that European flavour that's proven domestically? Do we bring back Ange Postecoglou for the rodeo of a lifetime? Or I don't even know what that means. Or do we go and get Kettle Knutson and satisfy the long clamber to bring him to the club? Get your votes in. We'll be ending the show shortly, and we'll let you know the results of it.
That's the thing. We don't have weeks, Quinny. We don't have weeks. Realistically, we've got to do this soon, because we've got to do some business in this window as well, and it's already the 5th of January. I know we brought in a player, we brought in a Rojo, and that's not a huge risk because he's on a loan, so if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. But we're already seeing guys like Simpson Pusey, loan cancelled, going out, and Amura going out, so there's already things happening. So you really, whatever you're doing, you've got to get them in this week. It's got to happen now. You can't be sitting at the end of the window going, oh, what we're going to do. If it is going to be a Neil and Maloney or whatever, just say, right, that's it. We're not appointing a manager now. You're here to the end of the season, and then we'll review it again then. Because that was the big, you mentioned it earlier, we got to near that week with the cup final, and we could have just left them in charge. We probably would have won the cup final. Yeah. Rangers there, and convincingly, and outplayed them and deserved to win. And then you never gave them the cup final, and all of a sudden you've got this big shambles. So, yeah, if you're going to bring them back in, just leave them there and just say, right, okay, we'll review it again in the summer. Because I don't think Martin O'Neill in any capacity wants to commit to anything, which is fair enough. So,
well, again, like I've heard whispers and rumours that O'Neill would be properly up for like a bit of a gig, maybe not a 5-year contract or something, but something with a bit of a run at it. JJ Lisbon, Quinny doesn't like Robbie Keane. Now, Robbie Keane, I think, has a lot of baggage when it comes to the Celtic job and Celtic fans. I can only speak, like, when was Robbie Keane at Celtic? Like 15 years ago? I can remember, like, just working in Glasgow, nightlife and stuff like that. I remember, like, people telling me stuff, like Robbie Keane was, like, maybe... I don't want to say anything because this is on the internet, and I don't want to calling people's names out or anything like that, but... I think he's a divisive character. I don't think everyone uniformly loves Robbie Keane. I don't think that. I know that. But I think with his managerial record of Ferencvaros and Israel, I like what he's building there from a football perspective as a CV. But to go, and I know Ferencvaros are doing very well in the Europa League this year, just beat Rangers and stuff. But going from Israel to Hungary is like a nice wee step. He's maybe got one more step in him, and then being successful at that next step before I think he could be a credible Celtic manager. Personal baggage and all the stuff off the field to one side about working in Israel and all that kind of thing. So it's not that I don't like him. I think it's a premature appointment, not too dissimilar to like Damien Duff. I actually wouldn't mind Damien Duff. I think he's, if we're going to go for somebody like that, I would probably pick Duff over Brown and Robbie Keane. And is there someone else in that category? I'm not sure. But yeah, I think it's just not ready yet. kind of thing. Now he's big pals with Desmond, so maybe that's a difference maker, or allegedly a big pal with Desmond. So yeah, it's not that I don't like him. I just don't think he's really a candidate on a few levels.
I think somebody said that Tisdale led all the recruitment for the manager as well, or was heavily involved in that. So yeah, we just need to make a change again. Anyway, I'm going to go soon because I'm starving.
Yeah. I'll end the poll, and we're going to get running anyway. Ange has won the poll with 41%. Martin O'Neill on 38%, so a very tight one. Askew only at 6%. Knutson on 15%. So yeah, let's wait and see. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in today. Record numbers, biggest stream I've ever done. Thanks to everyone tuning in today. McBride, Happy New Year. Great to see you again as always. Earlier today, I actually released the Rangers breakdown. It's probably borderline redundant now. So if you want to check that out, feel free, go for it. Had a big reaction yesterday. I was on Axom this afternoon. I think I've had an invite to join Axom today. I don't know if they're still on, but anyway, plenty of stuff to get stuck into. Like, subscribe, share, and retweet, and all that good stuff, everyone. Hail, hail. On the hoops.